Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
TikTok Cafe, located on Causeway South at the I-10 in Metairie, is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Our menu offers breakfast dishes like our Western omelet made from scratch biscuits, grits, egg sunny side up, and lunch specials like our homemade cheeseburgers with a side of golden brown fries. Don't forget about our weekday lunch special and that every Tuesday is steak night. TikTok Cafe, open 24/7 at Causeway South at the I-10 in Metairie.
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll talk a lot about the New Orleans Saints. We'll get into the LSU Tigers. We'll talk a bit about the new offensive coordinator. We'll talk about everything surrounding that program. And we got a great guest to break it all down for you. Mike Detillier joins us again. Mike, welcome to the show. I'm telling you, hands down, I get the emails all the time. When's Mike coming back on the show? We try to get you once a month. I can't have you every week, but again, we love to have you. Thanks so much for being with us.
I appreciate it. I only got one complaint. Why you ask me to do this on Thursdays when there's no news going on? Nothing.
It's a dead period.
Nothing happening at all in sports. Man, I'm disappointed in you, Eric.
This is going to be
it's always a pleasure.
Yeah. This is going to be a great weekend, obviously, with the divisional playoffs and, of course, a lot going on up at LSU right now. Let's start, first of all, talking about the Saints. And when it comes to the Saints, let's go back and look at Carolina first. Carolina, the game plan for Carolina on defense was to stop Ingram and Kamara and let the Hall of Fame quarterback beat him. Breeze was 22 of 33, 376 yards, 2 touchdowns, and that 1 interception, which really was kind of a glorified punt. He completed a pass to 8 different receivers, and very, very aggressive play calling for Sean Payton, who pretty much threw the game plan out the window when the Carolina says, you're not going to run on us. Kamara and Ingram are not going to beat us. Mike, what did you see? What are your thoughts on that Carolina win?
Well, if what you saw against Carolina, you're going to see against Minnesota. I mean, the Vikings you're not going to run against us. Mm-hmm. If you're going to beat us, have Drew Brees do it. Now, I know for some people that's crazy. No. If you take away one part of the game and you play defense the way the Vikings do, and they're one of the few teams that can rush 4, drop 7 in coverage. And so, I thought Cam Newton had one heck of a game. I mean, I thought he played as well as he could play. And, that first drive was almost an omen of what would happen. He puts the ball right into the receiver's hands. It goes right through it. And then Graham Gano, who had missed one field goal all year long, misses that field goal.
Yes.
The storyline of that game is basically the storyline of the season. The defense.
Yes.
They bent, didn't break. Despite the fact, no Okafor, no A.J. Klein, no Vaccaro, no Anzalone. I mean, all these guys out,
right,
and yet they were able to come up with the big plays when they needed it. And, listen, I give Dennis Allen tremendous credit. I think he did one heck of a job. Mm-hmm. Again, with a lot of your talent not there.
Yes.
But that's been the storyline all season long. Every bit as much as the rookie crop, mm-hmm, which I think has been fabulous. But we didn't know this defense would play this well. And again, It's in this NFL, and in getting these big games, it's all about you settling for 3 and I can get 7.
Yes.
And that ended up being the telltale sign of this game. Other thing, too, is, again, Cam Jordan, he was basically unblockable late in that game. How well he has played all season long, and arguably you could say the top defensive end overall in this league of how good he's played. No running game for the Saints, and eventually you would have to give the baton to the future NFL Hall of Fame, and he came through for you.
Yes.
Big. And you got some of the accessory players come through. Josh Hill, Ted Ginn Jr., and sometimes that doesn't happen.
Right.
And Mike Thomas, again, had another huge game. Now, this week's going to be a different story because of who you playing. And they're going to line up Xavier Rhodes up against Mike Thomas, and that'll be a wash. So, again, Ted Ginn Jr., Josh Hill, they got to come through for you. And how, in game 1 when you played them, Alvin Kamara, we saw him in preseason, but he wasn't the straw that turns the drink offensively here because he was still trying to figure out what to do with Ingram, Peterson, Kamara. Now, how does Minnesota, from a defensive standpoint, line up against him when you put him out in the slot or you put him out wide? Do they bring Harrison Smith from free safety to cover him? I don't know about a linebacker covering him. That don't normally work.
Sure.
So I thought, again, in these type settings, you played this team 3 times. They know you, you know them. It would come down to a play or 2 in a game. I think that drop pass in the end zone early was significant. And then on the final play, they have lived a lot kind of on the edge blitzing, but they don't do it as much. Let's say when Greg Williams was there. I mean, Greg loved to turn it up all the time. To have Dennis Allen call that blitz with Von Bell on that play, and he was just hanging on until somebody else could help him out on that play, I thought that was crucial in that football game.
You know what's interesting about that Von Bell blitz? He did it one time earlier in the season and got burned. Then he did another time in the season where he didn't blitz and he tried to play coverage and they got burned on that. So again, they were very, very aggressive in their play calling on both sides of the ball. You kind of expected them to maybe go after Newton a little bit, and especially again at that last play. Again, it works. A lot of these calls, the 57-yard field goal, going forward on 4th and 2. If it works for you, you're a genius.
You're a genius.
Right.
If not, you don't know what you're doing.
Right. You're considered reckless.
Right. Exactly.
And it seemed to work for them on Sunday against the Panthers. Mike, it's amazing. 20 players total on IR, 12 defenders. You've had 8 players that have been added from the street or practice squad to the Saints defense on the Saints offense and defense. Mike, have you ever seen anything like this? I mean, again,
not on this team.
Not really. I mean, it's
on
amazing.
Other teams you've seen, because I remember the Patriots when they won the first Super Bowl over the Rams. They had, I think it was 24 guys that were on injured reserve that year that had went out. But for this Saints team, and they were pretty much paper thin to begin with, because remember, before the season started, Nick Fairley, a scratch.
Right.
Delvin Breaux, scratch. So right off the bat, you've taken away your best inside pass rusher, and at that time considered your best cover man. It's been a really good job, and I do think that has been the top storyline of this season, of how well this defense has come around. The first 2 games was no indication of how well they could piece all this together. And certainly the rookie crop, which was ends up being, along with the 81 and 2006 group, the best they've ever had. But this group, to come together this quickly is remarkable. Amazing. And to come up with this type of play. And again, the sacks, the interceptions, to be able to, I think that one thing correlates, that pressure gets you picks in the back. And they were able to get a lot of pressure, and it ended up certainly helping out on the back end. And Lattimore has just been a remarkable football player when you consider the fact that, what Lattimore gets, what Marcus Williams gets. You didn't have those 2 guys on the team last year. Really coming through huge for you.
Mike, your draft guide is, again, for a lot of us, is a Bible. We look forward to it every year. You've been doing this for a long time now. compare and contrast this rookie crop to some other rookie classes you've seen, not just in New Orleans but elsewhere. You know, some are saying that this may be the best rookie class ever.
I don't know about that because I know that Steeler group in '74 when they had Swan,
Yes.
Stallworth, Mike Webster, all go into the NFL Hall of Fame. And Jack Lambert also on that group. That's a pretty strong statement to say the greatest of all time. I think you can make the comment it's the best the Saints have ever done. Because, you know, when you look at that top part of the draft with a Lattimore, you've never had a cornerback this good. Kamara gives you an element, you know, he's better than what Reggie Bush or Sproles was on this football team. Ryan Ramczyk, who I think is one of the unsung heroes on this team, he hasn't missed a snap all season long, either starting at right tackle or left tackle. He missed all of the OTAs, and he missed part of the training camp. Still recovering from the hip. Marcus Williams comes in. And Anzalone would have been the starter too, but he goes out early in the season along with Trey Hendrickson and Muhammad. But, man, Eric, that's as good as this team has ever done. When you consider 7 rounds, and that 2006 group was really good too. With Reggie, with Roman Harper, with Zach Strief, with Marcus Colston, Jari Evans. But this group, I think, can match it.
Yeah. 81 was really good.
81, too, was because, you know, you had George Rogers, you had Ricky Jackson, Hobie Brenner, Frank Warren, Jim Wilkes. Hokie was part of that group. And not even talking about, you know, Russell Gary, who was a second-round pick, was a pretty good football player, too. So it ranks right there at the tip top of what this team has ever done drafting. And it's sorely needed. Because we had talked about it. Listen, you can't average one player a draft in a 5-year span. That doesn't work. It's not going to come together. They were able to make it work. It started in 16, and then you clipped it again in 17. So that was huge. And certainly a lot of that has to go out to Jeff Ireland, who had a big part in piecing these drafts together, along with Mickey and Sean, because they the final say. The scouts and Jeff, they hand the information over, and Mickey and Sean set up the final board on how they think fits with the team. So a group decision, but it certainly worked out this year.
81, 86, 2006. Can you and this class here? Can you think of any more classes?
None.
I mean, that's really the best classes ever, right?
That's the best classes ever, and I would say you would think the 2006 group would be number one, and then I'd put 81 after that. But this group, you almost got to jam them in there of how well they have played and what type of impact they've had, and the fact that you may well have the offensive defensive rookie of the year on the same team. That hasn't been done. You got to go back to 1967. The Detroit Lions had Lynn Barney on defense and Mel Farr on offense. That's a long, man, you're talking about that's a long time back when you could have that type of kind of double-digit type situation.
And then, of course, you just kind of mentioned this, the back-to-back classes, when you want to look at last year's class and this year's class, I mean, dynamite in terms of filling a lot of needs and, you know, players that came in and immediately contributed to this team.
And you didn't whiff on the free agency part.
Yes, that's
great.
right.
Larry Wolford came in, and he really was a solid starter and a good starter. Ted Ginn Jr. coming in to fill in for the big play threat that you lost with Brandon Cooks. Alex Okafor, before the injury and what type of impact he had on this football team, and along with A.J. Klein and Manti Te'o, who have been solid. Listen, none of the linebackers are standout guys, but they all solid across the board and better than what you have, with the exception of Craig Robertson, who year in, year out, man, he answers the bell. Answers the bell.
You mentioned Jeff Ireland. I mean, Terry Fontenot, obviously, on player personnel. These guys have done a great job. And look, you know, you were talking about it, you know, one player per draft. I mean, that's one of the reasons why that, along with, again, really some bad moves in terms of the cap, why this team had fallen back 4 of the last 5 years, 7 and 9. Ireland comes in, and obviously it's got to be somebody that Peyton really trusts at this point. It's made a world of difference here.
Because Sean still has the chalk in his hand. No matter what, he's got that. I mean, I know they say, well, you know, Mickey has the final say. Come on. the head coach, he got that chalk in his hand. He knows exactly the type player he wants on this football team. And it goes to show you how crazy the draft worked out. If Buffalo had kept the pick right ahead of the Saints and they picked Marshawn Lattimore,
right,
you would have selected Patrick Mahomes, who would have spent all this season as a backup. You know, just that little move that, and I think the Chiefs sort of got tipped off that the Saints might do it. And because, listen, guys talk. And they talk about, you know, how women talk all the time. No, if the guys in this league, they can't keep their mouth shut about it. How would Andy Reid know that they're going to pick him and he jumps one pick ahead? He was smart enough to have gotten a little intel on that, on exactly what happened. But to get Lattimore, and I go back to, you know, my good friend John Robinson with the Tennessee Titans. He loved Lattimore. He was scared with the hamstring issues. And, you know, doctors were a little bit, one doctor, I think it's going to be okay. The other guy, once he starts to get it, it'll be a chronic problem. That didn't happen. And when you look at what Lattimore has done, he takes away one side of the field. He's the best cornerback that has ever put on the black and gold uniform. The best ever. Nothing against any of the other guys, but that's been one spot, Eric. We haven't riddled up with superstar players on it. He has become that big-time player for you on defense. And Ken Crowley, development on the other side. I got to give Aaron Glenn credit there. Here was a guy who was a 4-year starter at Colorado. And Jim Levitt told me this. Like, I don't get what the NFL is looking for in a corner. He's big, he's fast, he's got length. My thing is, how can he go undrafted?
Yes.
But the first 2 games, Aaron Glenn decided to start Devontae Harris.
Right.
Instead of Ken Crawley.
Which is mind-blowing.
How can that happen other than the Aggie connection? And the one thing with Devontae, you talk to him, man, he talks and he's got confidence like Dion. You know, he don't think anything's going to bother him. Now, his play's not even close, but he has that kind of bravado about him. And I think Aaron liked that until he got him on the field in a regular season game. That's why I tell people all the time about, man, preseason's the biggest mirage in the world. A lot of times you see guys in preseason and they don't ever show back up in the regular season. Look at Muhammad. Was there one guy in the preseason other than Kamara you would say, man, that guy really looked good?
Flashed.
But all of a sudden they figured out he's a little bit of a one-trick pony as a player, as a pass rusher. And when he got to play, how many big plays did he make?
Right. And look who he was playing against, too.
That's right.
Playing
second and third string guys.
Right. Those guys are Dornax now, bagging groceries.
Right, exactly.
No doubt. Mike,
and also, too, I give Sean a lot of credit with this. The mental deal of 3 straight 7 and 9 years. And they got a lot of people who wrote articles, Sean should go, you got to blow up this team, get rid of Drew Brees, all this other stuff. Got to happen. We got to rebuild. You know, the patience here really paid off because my thing is, I know if I look at the 3 best play callers in the NFL offensively, Sean's in that 3. I think Mike McCarthy's the best out in Green Bay. He does a great job. Now, he's a lot better when he got Aaron Rodgers into that thing. I think Kyle Shanahan is a superb play caller. Everybody will remember the 4th quarter in Atlanta, but look what he did to Matt Ryan's career in Atlanta. And Jimmy Garoppolo comes in, no training camp. Look what he did for the 49ers and Sean. I think that marriage between him and Brees have been great, but he pumped some confidence into this team that really wasn't there. And he got the mindset right. And I think a lot of this game is mental, that you've got to jump that emotional and that ditch to get over. I think Sean did a fantastic job this offseason getting them prepared for the regular season. Then you pull 2 stinkers off right off the bat to get them jump-started again. That game in Carolina, to me, really, I think, was the tripwire football game for this team. You went up against the Panthers, who had smoked the first 2 teams on their schedule, and you went in there and you spanked them, but good. It gave them some confidence. And again, one game after another. For this team to pull off 8 straight wins, after those first 2 games, no one could have predicted that.
Mike, I was one of those guys that, again, was questioning whether Peyton was focused, whether he should have the opportunity to continue as head coach. And again, a part of it, as you mentioned, he had the chalk in his hand. He made the bottom line.
Personnel decisions.
He makes a decision.
Coaching decisions.
Okay, it's his decisions at the end of the day.
Two, the coaching changes.
Yeah, that's huge.
Listen, it's tough when you've been with a guy like Joe Vitt and Greg McMahon and Bill Johnson. Guys all won a Super Bowl together.
Sure.
To say, hey, got to go.
And he trusts those guys.
You got to go. I got to make the move here. Bringing Curtis back at the wide receiver position because Martin gets the offensive coordinator's job with the Jets. When there were more than a few other people looking to try to grab Curtis at that particular point. He made all the right moves. Right. And he made one of the things like Ryan Nielsen. Man, I can't tell you how many people got in touch with me. Why are they hiring a college coach? And look who was his mentor, Ed Ogeron. Right. Okay.
Well, he's a teacher though.
But he's a really good teacher. Right. And look how well that defensive front has played all season long.
Throw Mike Nolan in there as well.
Mike Nolan has done a fantastic job bringing in Mike Westhoff.
Great move
into that thing. Now, I think for most fans is, man, I'd like to have seen Alvin Kamara running back kickoffs all year long. And Monday night we had Clarence Verdun on. Clarence, old buddy of mine from Dulac, Louisiana. And his
knows a little bit about it.
His name's on that Ring of Honor in Indianapolis. Yes. So he was one heck of a football player. His thing is he thinks that if Kamara worked at it, because we've seen him in practice, Kamara's kind of shaky on the punt return part of the game. He really thinks that if he works at it, because he said, I was never a punt returner until I got to Indianapolis. I was a kickoff guy, but I worked at it, and I became a really good punt returner. He thinks that Kamara could be every bit as good a punt returner as Devin Hester.
Wow, that's strong.
And coming from Clarence, that's really, really strong.
Mike, I guess the point I was making was I think the criticism of Peyton was justified.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely justified. And again, look, he's turned it around, back-to-back drafts. That obviously are spectacular. You look also at the free agency moves. I mean, he was filling out his roster because of the problems with the cap, the misses, with undrafted free agents. You can't win consistently with undrafted free agents.
No, and I go back to, I got to talk to Jim Chaney this offseason. Jim, he always says he's the vagabond coach. Man, he's got a resume about this long. He's the offensive coordinator at University of Georgia. And his deal is, you know what? The coaching is one thing, but great players really make you a good coach.
Sure.
And you think about the impact of the development of Michael Thomas, Kamara, Lattimore,
Davidson, Onyemata. Come on.
All those guys. And Onyemata, he was nothing but a power guy. We had on his defense, his head coach in Canada. He was like, the first 2 years are going to be a whiff for him. He doesn't really know football. 5 years ago, he didn't even know what a football looked like. But he said, by year 3, you watch how good he's going to be because he's smart, he learns well, and he said, by that time, he's going to understand this game at another level. You saw the big plays he's starting to make now as a pass rusher from the interior. And that's something this football team really needs. They need some push up the middle. And they had played Sheldon out wide, and you understand that too. Because if I see Trey Hendrickson at defensive end, I'm running the football right at him. So I think Ryan and Mike Nolan, Curtis, all those guys, they've done a great job. It was a really good staff that he pieced together. But I agree with you. It was justified, the criticism. How many other coaches could go 3 straight 7 and 9s and survive?
No, not many.
Very few in this league.
Not many. And at the end of the day, whether it was the Super Bowl honeymoon, Mr. Benson's affinity for Peyton, not wanting to shake things up and maybe just shaking up the coaching staff, whatever it was. Look, at this point, they delivered. And what it takes is, as you mentioned, is players. And back-to-back drafts where they've got, almost every player has come in and contributed, if not each and every one. And then not too many busts on the free agency side as well. And now all of a sudden, you've also got some players that have grown within the system. And that's why where they are today. What's mind-boggling to me, though, Mike, is what's going on right now with, again, the injuries that we've seen on this team and going out and being able to pull guys off the street, literally off the trash heap and fitting them in, and those guys are producing for this team now.
Charles Johnson kind of, and doing a weekly show out in Tampa. he was the whipping guy there. I mean, all they talked about is all the money they spent on him, and he was unproductive. He came in here, in his first 2 games, he got sacks and a couple of tackles for losses. To be able to do that is really, really strong.
I mean, Freeney comes in. I mean, it's not Dwight Freeney, okay?
But Jonathan, he makes a play out in the open field. It goes to show the difference. And Bobby and I, we looked at one another, and I was like, hey, Bobby, that's the difference between college and pro football. In college football at Auburn, Cam Newton turns that corner, and there's no one catching him. But Freeney had the beat on him, and he was able to bring him down. Freeney was a guy that they saw in practice when they would co-practice with the Patriots.
Right.
And, you know, when he got cut loose, hey, we want him on this football team, and he's come in here and done a really, really good job in that specialty position that you have him in. He's not a starter, but he's seeing a lot of playing time. Same thing with Mike. You know, Mike was here fighting what he had, then he gets cut loose. They bring him back a few weeks later. His special teams play. You know, you look at that and say, wow, that sort of thing really shows you they're paid a lot more attention to personnel.
Yes.
Which I think is critical in this league.
Well, and look, they've had to have it. Because
and Justin Hardy. Here was a guy who was a wideout at University of Illinois. They saw him in the practices with the Texans. He gets cut loose. They bring him back on special teams. Now he's working at safety.
Yes.
So, again, it's almost like for all the bad moves of the last 5 years, they've made every right one this year.
Right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Mike's going to break down the Minnesota Vikings, talk about the matchups between the Saints and Vikings. We'll do that. We'll also talk about the LSU offensive coordinator situation, the way the Tigers ended their season. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Mike Detillier is with us, pro football, college football analyst, and, of course, Mike Detillier's draft guide, which we'll ask him about before the show is out. You're watching Inside New Orleans. Don't go anywhere.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Amco Fence, locally owned and operated since 1976. Fully licensed and insured and a member of the BBB, Amco serves both residential and commercial customers. If you're looking to repair, replace, or install a fence for security or aesthetic reasons, Amco Fence supplies wooden, metal, chain link, vinyl, and ornamental or automatic gates. Amco aims to satisfy your fencing needs. Amco Fence, 504-468-9559 or amcofencecompany.com.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Mike Detillier is our guest. Mike, before we get started, your draft guide, when you're in the midst of putting that thing together now,
Yes,
I'm sure.
we are. Yes, we are.
When can we expect it out?
It'll be out first couple days in April.
Beautiful.
So,
Beautiful. And the best way to catch your columns, find out everything you're doing is how?
SaintsReport.com, WLAE-TV.com, and everybody sort of grabs it. So it goes from there.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Mike, I said a lot on the radio show this week, much like I did last week against Carolina. I just think the defensive injuries at some point are going to catch up with this team. Now the loss of Andres Pete, even though Clemente has played so well this season, going up against that vaunted Vikings front. I'm reluctantly picking the Vikings this week. I reluctantly picked the Panthers last week.
But I can understand that.
But break it down for us. Talk about the strengths and weaknesses, with the Saints and Vikings, and what you think may happen.
The most underrated big-time player in pro football on defense is Linville Joseph. You just watch what he does inside. If you watch the game that they played in week 1, there were 4 times he basically forklift either the center or the guard right back into the lap of Drew Brees. And Drew was heading south because that takes away your ability to step up in the pocket and make a throw. And that's what Joseph does as well as anybody in this game. Now, Aaron Donald's a different player, but Linville's a huge man. So if I, going up against the Saints, I swing Tom Johnson over the center guy, and I'll put Linville over Calamonte and say, try to handle him and see what happens. And what he does a lot, he's the kind of pick player for the edge guys. He forces you to move one way or another, and then all of a sudden, here comes Griffin, here comes Hunter, here comes Anthony Barr. And so you don't realize how good he is until you see him and what he does to the middle, and he slams up the inside running game. They're giving up 3.7 yards a rush, which is, that's strong. The one thing that I look at it from the Viking standpoint offensively is how the Saints will match up against Kyle Rudolph. He's not Greg Olsen, but he's really good.
Yes.
Greg Olsen was running free downfield. My thing is, how can you mess up that type of
How can you not
coverage
cover
against
88?
him? He's the guy. Now, Kyle Rudolph is not kind of what I would call the deeper threat as Olsen, but he got 8 touchdowns this year. They get in the red zone. Case knows where to go with the football. He finds it. And so who do you match him up against? Manti Te'o, Raphael Bush? They're not going to be able to cover Kyle Rudolph in that spot. Third down efficiency, which is a stat that I think you always type of keep in the back of your mind. The Vikings are number 1 defensively in getting a team off the field on third down. Eric, they've given up 51 third down conversions in 16 games.
Ridiculous.
I mean, when you think of that number, that's staggering of how they can slam the door on you. And this team has struggled. So for the Saints to win this game, they got to stay ahead of the chains. Because if not, if you're getting a 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 7 situations continuously, you're going down. You got to make this short yardage situation for them, because if not, it ain't going to work. The big advantage for the Saints, Drew Brees, Case Keenum. Now, on paper this year, if you look at the stats, they're close. Really close on how it's set up. But postseason games played, Drew's played in 12, Keenum 0. And all I'm telling you is, we saw it a little bit last week, how guys react to big games. Pharaoh Cooper, now, when you looked at that game, Rams, Falcons, the big advantage, special teams, Rams. Cooper, his return skills. What does he do? 2 fumbles. And the third one, he almost fumbled it too. You know, he wet the pants in that moment. And that sometimes that happens in big games. The key is, bottom line is this. Case Keenum cannot play average against the Saints. He's got to play at a high level for them to win. And for Drew, everything's on his back. Because I think the Vikings are going to shut that running game down and say, you know what? Do what you did against Carolina. And we have Xavier Rhodes go up against Thomas. So find those other guys on the other side to see if you can make it work.
Break Case Keenum down for us.
You know, he reminds me of Jake Delhomme. He's built like him, kind of has some mannerisms similar to Jake. He's a little bit of a riverboat gambler. I'll put the ball up in traffic. Interception. He got amnesia. I'll come back and catch him the next time. He's got good mobility skills, not great, but he can get out of the pocket. And he's what I call a groove passer. When you see him and he starts to hit, you're in for a long day. Now, he can get cold, but he is a bit of a groove guy, and that's similar to what Jake was, a bit of a groove-type passer. Their running game has been solid with Murray and McKinnon. It's not as explosive as they had it with Dalvin Cook. Thielen and Diggs, you can see where I don't think they're going to test Lattimore too many times. They're going to go after Ken Crawley, which most teams do. But again, I see the matchup being who can guard Kyle Rudolph. I think he's a big name in this. And who can block Linville Joseph?
I would agree. Also, again, and I've talked about this, this is really an all-season long thing. When the Saints have the opportunity to have an officiating crew that allows them to have hand-to-hand combat on the outside. Now that goes for Mike Thomas against a corner, or again the Saints corners against wide receivers. They let them play physical. That bodes in the Saints' favor. Gene Senator's crew's coming in here this week. We know that all the teams, again, they got a book on those particular officials. In the playoffs, they allow teams to play more or less. That's hopeful that will happen this week because that plays in the Saints' favor.
I think they let them play a lot more in the second half than the first half. I think that, they don't want to kind of interrupt things late, but I think you'll see a lot more flags in this game than you did against the Panthers. And I think they're going to kind of play this close. Because, listen, the Vikings are a little bit of a pull and tug team, too.
No, I agree.
When you watch them play, their corners, they're not adverse to that pull and tug, especially Trey Waynes.
Sure.
Rhodes, he can do what he wants to do. He ain't going to get a lot of penalties on him. I mean, he's a reputation guy. But Trey's another story. I think the big factor with them is what happens with Harrison Smith. Because he defensively, other than Linville Joseph, is the one guy that kind of scares you. He can play center field. He can one-on-one. He plays really good against the run. Harrison Smith is a big-time performer. How they use him, and as much as we talk about the football chess on the field, the football chess off. Mike Zimmer, Sean Payton, both on the same staff with Bill Parcells in Dallas. They both know one another. They know what they like to do and what they don't like to do. I don't use this word often, but Mike Zimmer is a defensive genius. And if you make a mistake, you're in way back the line. His defense, they don't make a lot of mistakes. And just like as good as Sean is on offense, Mike Zimmer is every bit that type guy on the defensive side. So you know what that comes down to? Special teams. Which team makes the big play, or there's a fumble, or missed field goals? Something happening on special teams when you have the top-ranked defense going up against the number 2 offense.
Right. Last week was Coleman and Adams, and Breeze manipulating those guys with his eyes when they went single high. Big difference with Harrison Smith. Exactly. Big difference with Smith this week.
Exactly, because he's one of the best in the game. Now he might not have the biggest name recognition, but he's a big time player.
Yeah, if you know football, you know him.
You know him. And other thing too is, I know coaches say, it doesn't mean any difference, but it does. Crowd noise. You're going to get a taste of your own medicine here. Man, it is loud in Minnesota, and when that dude starts blowing them horns all over, it is loud. So the thing is to try to get on Minnesota early, because if not, you're going to have a lot of water come over that bridge.
Right. Mike, who you like and why?
You know what? It's a crazy thing, and we were talking about this kind of off the air, that first week, underdogs, all 4 covered. That's old Buddy Diliberto line. Man, Buddy used to always preach, man, week 1, we got to take the underdogs. We got to take the underdogs. You'd have been 4-0 in 2 of the 4 games you won outright. He always would say, week 2, the favorites cover almost 70% of the time. When you think about New England, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, with a huge decided edge at the quarterback position, those games, you could see that goes that way. I think if there's one upset, it's the Saints. Just because of Breeze. I think that element going up against Case Keenum, I think could well give you the deal, but it'll be razor close football game. I think it may come down to a walk-off field goal by one of the 2 teams.
Right. Well, and Kai Forbath is their guy, and again,
and we got Will Lutz.
Right, and we've seen what Forbath can do, inconsistent in time, and Lutz has been kicking the ball really well.
That one I give Sean too. Last year everybody kind of made a little bit of fun of, he had the best kicking workout he ever saw, and he struggled.
Yes, he
not
did.
all of it was his fault.
Right.
There was blocking, holding issues. Now all of a sudden now, he's become a big-time player at all of 23 years old. You got yourself a stud kicker here.
No doubt. Mike, let's shift gears to the LSU Tigers. Things kind of changed. I mean, again, when you look at the loss of Notre Dame in the Citrus Bowl, no 10-win season, no bowl championship to be able to kind of tout. All of a sudden the perception in Baton Rouge was, or at least across the state, Ed Ogeron, maybe the job's a little bit too big for him. I mean, those that maybe were on his bandwagon started to jump off his bandwagon, especially with the infighting between him and Matt Canada. Today, Steve Ensminger was announced as the offensive coordinator for the LSU Tigers. Jerry Sullivan, 73-year-old wide receiver coach, one of the best ever at being a wide receivers coach, will be the passing coordinator, and James Craig, with the new offensive line coach, will be handling part of the running game coordination. And it's interesting because you and I talked about this last time you were on the program.
I knew Matt was going.
Right, and you knew Matt was going, and you had mentioned that maybe Steve Ensminger didn't really want this job.
Listen, Steve's told me numerous times, Mike, I'm not interested. And so that goes to show you Coach O knew how to recruit. He recruited Steve to take the job.
Right.
And listen, he's always held Steve in high regard. Bottom line with Steve is, and I think Steve's a good coach, and he's taken a lot of unjust criticism. This is Coach O's decision. You're going to blame somebody, don't blame Steve. This is Orgeron's decision to put Steve in that spot. Steve has got to fix the quarterback situation. If he does not do that, that's the last big decision Orgeron makes. Pre-Nick Saban, Les Miles, 9 wins, very successful season for LSU. Today, it's a disappointment. Would you have felt better if they'd have beat Notre Dame and been 10 wins?
There's no doubt about it. I think the whole perception changes.
Changed that day. That was a game you should have won. You had control of early.
Yes.
You squandered opportunities. Again, you better fix the kicking situation there too.
Amen.
Because if you don't, again, you're going to be stuck in this spot. But again, it comes down to, I think LSU defensively, with Matt Canada, with the talent that you're able to get, you're going to be a good defense every year. What has held this football team back? Quarterback. And until you fix that, you are stuck in neutral at this point. Everybody tells me about how great a coach Tom Herman was, and listen, I don't want to take anything away from Tom. Sure. I think Tom's a good coach. What did he do at Texas this year? With all kind of talent playing in the Big 12.
Right.
You know what? He was an average football team in the Big 12. You know what made him a great coach at Houston? Greg Ward Jr. Now, a lot of people don't remember. Greg Ward Jr., he was all of 5'10", if that. But he was one whale of a college quarterback who won 82% of his games at Houston for Tom Herman. Okay, Tom Herman was a good coach. You know what made him a real good coach? Greg Ward Jr. He could make throws that very few guys can make and also run with the football.
Yes.
Who would anybody say is the quarterback whisperer in college football today? Jimbo Fisher, right? He put 12 guys in the National Football League. What happened when Francois went down? They became an average team without Francois at quarterback. Okay? But he parlayed that pretty good. Man, he's getting paid pretty well at A&M. But it goes to show you, and people say, oh, you overvalue the quarterback position. Where do you think Oklahoma would be without Baker Mayfield? Now, they got a good young freshman that's in there I think can really play for him. But, man, Baker Mayfield made some plays that are unbelievable. Jim Chaney, a lot of people, he's a vagabond coach. He starts the season with Eason at quarterback. Man, it was a bit of a rocky road. This is the same guy that started against Nichols, and they almost got beat a year ago. Jake Fromm made him a real smart coach. Real smart coach. So, for me, I think if they don't straighten out the quarterback situation, and you look at that schedule next year, you play Miami of Florida. In week 3, you play Auburn. Georgia's on there. Alabama's on there.
At Florida.
My thing about this, Eric, if they get to 9 wins, to me, next year, with a 9-win season, that's a big victory for Orgeron if he can get to 9 wins. Now, will it satisfy everybody? No.
It's not.
But the one thing that always breathes new life on any college or professional team, talented young quarterback, because you see it. That guy can make plays other guys can't. Danny Etling, God bless him. I think the world of him as a guy, and he played through back injuries. He's tough. He did everything he could do with his talent, but everything was real short or real long. Nothing intermediate. People said, well, why didn't they throw the intermediate pass? I'll blame that on Canada. No, don't blame that on Canada. Danny couldn't do it. He couldn't make that throw.
That wasn't his throw.
So why put that in the lineup? I think Matt did a good job this year. But it was friction, as we talked about last month. It was friction between him and Ed on what to do. There is only one boss. And bottom line is, this football team, Ed has not done a good job telling people what he wants to do offensively. That's the thing with him. One day I want to run the spread. One day I want to run the pro. No, he's told me so many times, Mike, I want to be USC South. Pro-style system.
Right.
With a fullback used sometimes, with the lead, with going with a halfback, wide receivers, tight ends in motion. We play power football, we throw the football, and they're going to sling it. Okay. My thing is next year, they're going to have to. Tell me the signature back that's on this football team. None.
For the first time in our lifetime.
In a long, long
I
time.
can't, Mike. I'm 57. Okay, we the same age, and I can't remember an LSU football team where there wasn't a back in the stable ready to step in for the guys that are going to the pros.
So is that guy going to be a freshman? And I'm not saying a freshman can't come in and do it.
We've seen it.
We've seen it many times. But my thing is, we kind of going all around here in the circle, and it comes back to one thing, a quarterback issue.
Well, is that guy on the team?
Listen, you look at, they had 2 of the Elite 11 quarterbacks on the squad in Miles Brennan and Lowell Narcisse. That is going to be Steve's biggest hurdle. He's got, and I think they'll play 2 quarterbacks next year.
Right.
I think that you will see a 2 quarterback system. And the one thing with Steve, he did that.
Yes.
When he was at LSU, him and David Woodley.
That's right.
And the crazy thing is, Steve would always tell me the story. Mike, you know, it's a crazy thing. Everybody thought I was going to be the pro quarterback and Woodley was going to be the coach. And it swung a little bit on that Ensminger becomes the lifetime coach, and Woodley becomes a pretty good quarterback with the Miami Dolphins.
Miami Dolphins goes to the Super Bowl.
Goes to the Super Bowl with him, and he gets beat out by a guy that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That Dan Marino guy,
he's
pretty good.
Not bad.
So bottom line is, they have to come up with something, and I do think play calling is a skill very few people have. And we talked about the 3 best in the NFL. I think Shanahan, Sean Payton, and certainly when you look at it across the board, how some of the guys do it, and Mike McCarthy, they do it at a certain level. In college football, a lot of this is scheme. What scheme LSU's got? They run the power deal. They're not throwing the football. So it's going to be a interesting year to see how the quarterbacks start the season. Because with those 2 tough games early, you could easily be 1-2. I mean, listen, that ain't stretching anything to lose to Auburn and to lose to Miami or Florida. And then you got what you got down the road.
You know, Mike,
that decision is going to make or break Ed Orgeron.
It is the decision.
But no matter who he brought in, that decision would have made or break it.
I agree. But let me say this, Mike. And you and I talked about this off the air, and I talked about it on the radio show. Nobody remembers what the defensive line's quotes are, but they will hang on every word of a head coach. And it was Ed Orgeron that said, I'm bringing in the top coordinators in football. He inherited Dave Aranda, who's a great defensive coordinator. Matt Canada was the best things in sliced bread. Everybody questioned the motion, and maybe let the
and even
let that
I
go.
told you when they hired him.
Oh, I know.
I don't know how this is going to work with Ed, because I know what he's told me. I mean, I've known him for 40 years. My thing about it is, Ed Orgeron has become the George H.W. Bush of coaches at LSU. They always, with Bush. Read my lips. No new taxes. What everybody will throw at him, I will bring in the best coordinators and the best coaches in America.
Instead of saying, I'm going to bring in guys that I feel comfortable with, they're going to run the type of system that I want to run. And that's been the criticism is not about Steve Ensminger. The criticism is,
you figure out what you have to do offensively.
You said you were going to do something, and you didn't do it in 1 year, and you can't make it.
So it was a political promise that he didn't keep.
Yes, no doubt. But, again, politicians get reelected over and over again on broken promises. There are a lot of fired head football coaches that broke promises that people, if they don't win, they remember very, very quickly. The other part of this, Mike, before we go to the phone lines, identity. What Ensminger talked a little bit about what he wanted to do today in terms of the offense. What's the identity of this offense?
If it's Steve's identity, they're going to sling it. I'm just telling you. The power stuff works when you have a Leonard Fournette and a Darius Geis and a Darrell Williams. But you don't have that type of back unless one of the freshman guys come in and makes that impact. So I think you're going to see LSU throw the football like you've never seen them throw it. Because I know what Steve wants to do. He loves the short pass and he catch that safety coming up to maybe stop it, and then he'll go deep. You're going to see LSU throw the football by necessity. more than ever because you don't have that signature back like we grew up with and like what most LSU fans have seen for the last 10, 15 years when you've watched LSU football. That guy's not there. So my thing is, why beat your head against the drum? You're going to have to throw it.
Right.
And now you're putting it in the hands of a guy that saw very little playing time and Lowell who saw none.
Yes, no doubt. Mike Detillier is our guest, 866-3200. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. To the phone lines we go. Toby's up first from Gretna. Toby, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Toby.
Yeah, Eric. Even though the offensive coordinator thing at LSU's been settled over the weekend, I just came up with a name. I know he didn't have too much success at Detroit, but he's with the Saints, Joe Lombardi. I'd like to maybe in the future, get your input on that, and thank you.
Thank you.
Listen, I think Joe's a really good coach. Things didn't work out real well with him in Detroit, and he got fired there. I know Ed knows him well because he was on the same staff. And, you know, when Ed was there in 08,
right.
Lombardi was there. Listen, this is a comfort hire. Bottom line, it's a comfort hire. He feels comfortable with Steve. He knew Jerry because Jerry had come in during the summer and worked with the receivers.
Yes.
The one thing I'm watching LSU receivers, my goodness, they can't run a route. So I think Jerry's going to help in that area. Jerry's one of the best wide receiver technician coaches around. People say, well, he's 73 years old. Man, listen, I know a lot of people in their 70s, and they got the energy of a 50-year-old. And I know a lot of people in their 30s, and they act like they're 68 years old. So, no, it's true.
It is true.
And as we get older,
no, I know.
And those numbers, you know, those numbers don't really matter.
It's hard to get off the couch sometimes.
And one of the things I do question, though, is from the energy level to recruit. He hasn't recruited since 1990.
Right.
That's a long time. And this recruiting world has changed dramatically since then.
Well,
So
that's Ed's strength at the end of the day, closing recruits.
And that's going to be maybe give him some salvation in February. Can he close this out
last
strong
four
with a Patrick Surtain? He got the commitment from Kelvin. Can he get Goodrich, a Jamar Chase? Can he get those four? Because that's the four that's on top of his board right now. If he gets that, then everything will calm down a little bit, but not until. Because he's going to catch holy you-know-what.
Greg is in Houma. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys. I got two questions for Mike. Number one is what happens to Kenny Vaccaro at the end of the season? And number two is what happens to Drew Brees if we win the Super Bowl, and what happens to Drew Brees if we don't win the Super Bowl? And I hang up and listen.
Thank you,
Greg. Either way, Brees stays.
I agree.
If it's on a one-year deal with an option or a two-year contract, Drew's going to stay.
Right. Aikman's comments the other day were just really off the wall.
Whatever. So I'm not going to comment on that because, listen, coaches tell you things sometimes, and coaches lie.
Come on.
I got them in my family. I should know.
Right.
And I got them as friends, and I really know
there you go.
They lied to me more ways than one. But I think Drew is staying here for the foreseeable future. If it's 1 year or 2 years, he's going to be back. That guy he ain't on the roster that can take his place. Nobody.
Plus, it's a young team.
And so why wouldn't you? And people are going to say he's not worth $25 million. Listen, that's the going rate. Play Chase Daniel.
Right.
Play Taysom Hill.
Forget about it.
And everybody, he's a great. And listen, I take nothing away from him as an athlete, but at Brigham Young, he never stayed healthy one full season there. Not one.
Not one. I
agree.
So
what is he going to do in the NFL? No. That guy's not on the roster. Kenny Vaccaro is the interesting story.
And what happens there with Von Bell and, of course, Williams?
My thing is, if Kenny Vaccaro, from what I hear, is asking for $8.5 million a year, that ain't happening. He's going to be playing somewhere else.
Yes.
And you know, last couple of years, he's not been there at the end.
Yes.
And so, to me, for suspension or whatever, he hasn't been there. I wouldn't be surprised at all you're going to be looking for another safety because that is way out of the price range for this football team to pay that type of money to Kenny Vaccaro.
I agree. Joey is in Metairie. Joey, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Joey.
Hi, guys.
if, as is the rumor, that Alex Smith becomes available, do you think it would be a good idea for the Saints to go after him as a successor to Drew Brees, or do you think they should go after a talented young quarterback and groom him? Yeah. I'll hang up and listen.
Joey, the only way Alex Smith is here is if Drew Brees isn't.
Right.
That's the only way.
Look what happened in New England. You think Drew Brees wants Alex Smith sitting behind him?
No. And does Alex Smith
want to sit behind Drew Brees? Right.
Come on, I want to go somewhere where I can play.
Sure.
I do think that this is the year they address that quarterback issue.
In the draft?
In the draft.
Yeah.
I know every year you take a look at it, and and Sean, I think he's wanted to draft quarterbacks, and we talked about it, Mahomes last year.
Right.
Had he been there, and situation been different with Lattimore not on the board. But I think this is the year they go after a young quarterback, because if you don't do it now, you've set yourself up.
Larry is in Kenner. Larry, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, Eric, thank you for taking my call.
Hey, Big Larry, how you doing?
I'm no here, buddy. Hey, Mike, Detillier, Larry, the who that truck in the house, baby.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, okay, Larry. Yeah. Now I recognize the voice now,
indeed.
Man. If I'd have saw the truck, then I'd have known it was you.
Yeah, you're right.
What I tell you, 11-5 at training camp.
You sure did.
Yep, you sure did.
You sure did.
Super Bowl.
But you told me that last year too.
Whoever wins between the Saints and the Vikings, do you think that team is going to go to the Super Bowl? And if you say the Saints, I need to borrow yours, Bobby Bear, and my boy Deke's credit card to buy me some snow tires to put on that Who Dat truck to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you're right.
I'll sit back and listen to you, Mike.
Thank you, Larry. The scariest team for me is Atlanta. We talked about this off the air. They haven't really shown you the whole works all year long. And all of a sudden, they get hot late. But, the crazy thing about the stat that jumps out at you, when they score more than 20 points in a game, they're undefeated this year. Man, Eric, 20 points, this is modern-day football.
Right, that's amazing.
That goes to show how good their defense is. And so I don't know about that winner of that game being the champ, because if it's Atlanta, I'm just telling you, that is going to be a tough out for whoever's got to play them.
Sure.
The Falcons, to me, are the scariest team in the NFC, because they've been there, they got a little bit of motivation, and their defense is awfully good. And they do have a guy in Matt Ryan who's he's not a top 5 quarterback like Brees, but he's from 6 to 10 in that range.
See if we can grab this last call. Got about a minute left. Tony's in Harvey. Tony, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Tony.
Hey, how y'all doing?
All right, Tony.
I'm calling about the defense. First question is the coaching staff. If we go to the Super Bowl, I think we're going to lose some staff on that defensive side. Maybe Dennis Allen. My question is, who will be stepping up there?
Okay.
On the second one is Brandon Coleman. He holds that ball like a loaf of bread. 2 weeks ago, he fumbled twice. Last week, he fumbled once. And you see the way he holds it. I think Willie sneezed the belly off from there. Thank you very much. I'm going to hang up.
Got about 30 seconds.
My thing about it is Dennis Allen hasn't been contacted for a head coaching job yet. I think that tells you Dennis may be a year away. With Brandon Coleman, why he's still on this team? He's a really good downfield blocker.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's a really good blocker. But, boy, is he inconsistent catching the ball. And when he's got it in his hands, you got a lump in your throat if he's going to hold on to it. He's the ultimate potential player in the NFL.
Mike, as always, thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Eric. Appreciate it,
man. Mike Detillier. Again, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night at 10 o'clock right here on WLAE. Also on Pelican Sports Television. That's 9 o'clock statewide. That's Friday nights. Catch me on the radio weekdays, noon to 2 on Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2. Download the iHeartRadio app. It's a free download for your smartphone or tablet. You can check out the show there. Keyword Sports 1280 or Eric Asher. Again, you catch all the previous episodes at ericasher.com. Of course, you can also download the podcast and listen to the radio show live there as well. Special thanks to Mike Detillier for joining us. Also the WLA production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Kenny Juno, Trey Lopez, and my director, William Hill. Again, thanks to Mike Detillier. Thanks so much for watching. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com.